Last episode, I didn't have our typical intro that we roll with here. I mean, just for the sake of it, welcome Leafs fans. I'm sure that seeing Josh and I after reading the title of this episode is not what you're hoping for after that game 7. I know Josh and I are both feeling the same way about it, but like it's it's one it's one of those things. It's just hard to like put into words almost what we just experienced and what we've gone through with this team, especially over the past 5 years. I know we've had our fair share of sadness, of missing playoffs and having bad seasons and disappointment in that sense. And then even having that season of battling back from a 3-1 series deficit to the Bruins in 2013, and we're up 4-1 in the game when we lose. And yeah, that's a collapse of all time that can't ever be forgotten and will be ingrained in our brains for as long as time will tell, really, as long as we're continue to be Leafs fans, I'm sure. But watching a game like tonight and watching a series slip away from us like this one, with the expectations as high as they were and a team as quality on paper as it had been and as good as they were in the regular season, is just, it's beyond putting into words, honestly, at this point. It really is. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can say. I mean, I feel we said this before we came on. It feels like we have so much to talk about, but nothing at the same time, in the sense where, all the analytical breakdown in the world won't reveal why we lost to this team. The best stat, if you were to look at one of them, would be to say that Carey Price, after tonight, is now 12-0 when his team scores 3 goals in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
What does that say to you about him? He's world class. It doesn't always matter the experience level in front of him. He's going to go out there and he's going to give you a chance. So he did it all series for the Habs, even when things got dark. And here they are, moving on to the next round against Winnipeg.
Yeah, and like we're breaking down game 7, Leafs versus Habs. Leafs lose this one 3-0. Like, that's just embarrassing. It's a game
Willie
7.
got one.
Oh, 3-1, sorry. 3-1, sorry. It's a game 7, and like you don't even get a goal on the board until a minute and a half left in the game. Good for Nylander. He played an incredible series, but it's embarrassing. Your best 2 players, and it's no slight to William Nylander. He was incredible, and he was expected to be one of the best players on this team. But you can't look at a team after this and say, "Man, you can't look at this roster honestly and say our best 3 players were William Nylander, Jack Campbell, and Jason Spezza." That's not acceptable. To look at this roster and walk away from a series like this and say those were our 3 best players. Kudos to William Nylander. He was probably expected to be one of the 3 best players. Kudos to Jack Campbell. He played incredible, which is completely unfortunate in all of this when you look back at all of it combined, because you look at these past playoff series that we've lost, and I honestly look at it and say, every single time there was a night where Freddie Anderson needed to be better. Freddie Anderson needed to have these back because he blew chances for the Leafs to win games. Even when the team played incredible in front of him, he lost games. Jack Campbell, not once in this series would I have said had one of those games where you say, man, if Jack Campbell did this, we would have won. He was incredible. He did everything he needed to and beyond throughout this series. Even tonight, you're down 2-0, and he continued to give this team opportunities to stay in the game and have a chance to win from that second period on. Like, he was incredible. So it's just like tough to be like, man, those were our 3 best players. It's sad.
You're right. That's an insane takeaway, but it's accurate, which makes it really crazy. I was thinking it over the whole time you said it. That truly is our top 3 takeaway from this series, and it can't be like that if you're trying to be a Stanley Cup winning team. And Jack Campbell, I agree with you. Up until this point, I think we couldn't have asked more of him. Tonight, we got we didn't play. He didn't play bad. The save percentage will be there, but it's the deflating goals. He had weak ones. I know he had some ones that were more difficult that he ended up saving, but it reminded me of Freddie, how even if he makes some insane saves, he lets a couple freebies go by him, and it really deflates the team. We've had that issue with Freddie. Campbell's always been pretty solid, but tonight he let in a couple soft ones, and it was early enough that I felt like the Leafs just got really deflated off that. So I'm not going to lie. I was disappointed in Campbell tonight. Do I think he blew the game for us? No, not at all. He let in 2 goals. I just think it was 2 goals that shouldn't have gone in. The Leafs were playing tight. And I mean, at the end of the day, he should have had it. So I know I'm not trying to hold a crazy standard to him, but we got deflated after that.
I really only think though that, like, personally, I just think the only one that he really should have had or wants back is that Gallagher goal. And even after looking at it, I think that Matthews' stick hit Gallagher's stick. I don't think he deflected the puck, but I think he hit Gallagher's stick as Gallagher was shooting, which could have just changed the angle or the way the puck came off the stick regardless. But I do know what you're saying. I just think that Perry goal, that it hit him. It looked like that puck was going wide, honestly. And then it hits Perry's shin pads and bounces into the net. Like, I can't blame him on that one. And then obviously the third goal is an empty netter. And I just, like, yes, that first one is a little bit deflating in the way it goes in there, but it's
Yeah,
still.
to me, it was a Freddie-esque moment where I was like, why in this huge crunch time moment do we have our goalie being scored on like that? I know
Yeah.
it doesn't happen too often to Campbell, and he's been really solid. I was just speaking completely truthfully about how I felt about him tonight. Now, you know what? He still did a solid job. He gave us a chance. I was just, a little taken aback by the fact that we were in another situation where we feel deflated early, and it wasn't because of anything the players did.
Yeah, and like you look at though, the biggest stories of this series is going to be, or the biggest story of this series is going to be the absolute like disappearance of Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner as this went on. Austin Matthews comes away with one goal. I'm not sure how many points the two of them both had. I know that like Marner has not scored a goal in the playoffs since 2018, 2019. That's a terrible, terrible, terrible statistic. It really, really is. And it's like, it's so unfortunate because I think Kyle Dubas has built a team that was very, very good. He filled every single need that this team had heading into this season, and then furthermore as the season went on, and then heading into the playoffs, picking up guys like Zach Bogosian, Wayne Simmons, Joe Thornton going into the season. These were things that TJ Brody, they were looked at as huge, huge positives to this team and holes that were needed to be filled in this lineup. And then you go into the deadline, you add Nick Foligno into that mix, and it's like he did everything he could as the manager, and then it comes down to Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner going absolute ghost. And now in their playoff careers, they are 0-7 in chances to close out a series. That is a terrible statistic for what we should be calling superstar players.
Yeah, well, the superstar players insulated by veteran players now who have a lot of leadership to offer. So how we blow a 3-1 lead to a team significantly worse than us with home ice. I mean, home ice doesn't mean a ton right now, but all these things factored in. We are the big time favorites. They are big time underdogs, but that Carey Price stat, that's the thing that just sticks in my head when I think about this series in general. Like, we had the right team built, but when we talk about Austin Matthews' struggles, he's a guy that's going to beat you with him looking at you in the eyes. Like, he beats goalies one-on-one.
Yeah.
That's just not happening with Carey Price in the net. Like, he's going to need to get ugly redirection goals. He's going to need to get rebound goals, garbage goals, like Zach Hyman-esque goals. You're not going to get that from Matthews on a regular basis. Like, that's just not his office.
Yeah.
So it's tough when a goalie catches fire like that. I know at the end of the day you got to go figure it out, but I sympathize with Matthews from the standpoint of, we just ran into a generational talent. It felt like when the Raptors would run into LeBron James. Like, we got owned that bad by Carey Price.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good analogy, but it's just too bad because even in those scenarios with LeBron James, even with like the teams that he had, and people may say they weren't the best teams, he had some sort of supporting cast. I would not say that Carey Price had the same supporting cast with the Montreal Canadiens, nor did the Toronto Raptors have as high level of talent or as strong of an all-around team as this Toronto Maple Leafs team did going up against them. And I respect that analogy. I think it's actually a pretty good one to just compare, like, running into that wall in the playoffs. But I just don't think it's acceptable at this point when you look at how good this Leafs team was. Every year we looked back on those Raptors ones and it was like, man, that's too bad. We had a really good team, but etc. This year it's like we look at this Leafs team and you say, man, we had an incredible team, and they sucked in the playoffs. Like, they sucked when it was important.
And everything's just starting to set in now. Like you remind yourself that Foligno, we traded him for a first round pick, which is now going to be like the 15th overall because we're out in the first round. And it just feels so ridiculous because Foligno was really, I still think, what we needed, but did it translate whatsoever? No.
No.
Like we didn't get our value out of Foligno. Now this pick's going to be great too, and it's in a year when no one's been scouting because of COVID. So a 15 overall pick is like a potential jackpot this year, but we all threw it into the fire to invest in being contenders right now, and it didn't pay off.
Yeah, and honestly, I think part of what the disappointment in this one too is that, and again, I think it comes down to like mostly Mitch Marner here, in my personal opinion. I think it comes down to him because I still don't think Matthews played poorly. I just think he couldn't score, which it sucks from when you're looking at a Rocket Richard winner who put up as many goals as he did and scored at such a rapid pace as he did. For a guy not to be able to score, like a guy of that caliber to not be able to score, it's shitty and it's tough to forgive. But I think when you look at the rest of his play, if you're someone who actually genuinely watches hockey and like watches closely, you know that he didn't play poorly. Whereas you look at the other end of this, and I know we talked about it on last one, but Mitch Marner genuinely let down this team. Like he played terrible throughout this playoff series, and there's no other way to put it. Like you cannot put that lightly. He was terrible throughout this playoff series, letting these puck over the glass penalties, these common turnovers, 2-on-1s that he was just blowing, even in games that they were winning, even in the games that they won, he was just like going on 2-on-1s and losing the puck or not realizing that a back checker was on him, missing nets, and then when that stuff happens, it just starts to accumulate, and you see things where like that play of, I think it was Brody fires the puck off Carey Price. He lets out a rebound off to the right side. Marner comes in to get the rebound off of like his one-timer side, essentially. He was a little far ahead of him, so he has to catch up to it. But it's just those things where like he does catch up to it. He's kind of got a chance to fire a one-timer, and it hits a guy in front of the net and bounces over the glass into the netting. And it's like these are the things that just continued to accumulate for him and just made it even harder for him to even show out in this series.
Yeah, his shot's not there. It never has been there. I've liked what he's done with it as of late. Like he does progressively figure out how to score more often, but it's not because he's shooting a laser out there. And it's also frustrating because a guy like Marner, he definitely demands too much time with the puck. But it's one of those hidden blessings where, do you really want to tell him to stop holding onto the puck that long? Like it pays off so evidently through stats. You don't want to necessarily say, you don't want to change what his nature is out there because he's a gifted player. But in the playoffs, when the space tightens up out there, you can visibly see it on Marner. He's not the same confident guy. He's not beating goalies like Carey Price with his shot one-on-one ever.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's becoming a big issue. And I defended it coming into the playoffs saying, do you want to trade? Like, what's the answer here? We can just trade Marner then? Because people are getting really tough on him. Like, well, guys, none of us want to let him go. So what does that say? Like, he's that good. We need to stay patient with it. But I am actually at the point too where I don't know what happens. By the end of the series, I was kind of rooting to see Willie with Austin more than anyone. And that's sad because Marner and Matthews are the iconic duo.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And it's just hard too because it's like he continually got better in the regular season and then just went missing in the playoffs. And it was like year after year after year he went missing in the playoffs. I even look at like Nylander in the past few years of playoffs has still had spurts where you look at and you say, man, I wish Nylander was better, or I wish Nylander did this, or he needs to improve on this to contribute better. He really showed this year in the playoffs that he was capable of elevating his game, especially when John Tavares went missing or went out with the injury, right? Like Nylander played incredible during that stretch down towards the end of the season, heading into the playoffs. He played a really, really good regular season, and you could tell this guy had elevated his game from seasons past, and you were thinking, hopefully this translates into the playoffs because that's what we really need to see from him, and it did, and he did translate his game. He did become a better playoff player, scoring 5 goals this playoff series. Like, he played a great series. But then on the other hand, you look at Mitch Marner, who has progressively gotten better in the playoffs and has shown no growth, or in the regular season, and has shown no growth when it comes down to the playoffs. Like, it's hard to look at because, yeah, it's great that he's making $10.5 million or whatever, and he finishes top 5 in points in the league and scoring in the regular season. But all of that means zero Zero. If he does nothing and he continues to do the same things he does over and over again in the playoffs year after year, it means nothing. That $10.5 million contract, flush it down the toilet because it's hot garbage if he continues to do what he's doing. And it's just like, at what point do you weigh the benefits and the costs of a guy who can finish top 5 in the league in points in the regular season and then goes missing in the playoffs? Like, is it worth it?
Well, I don't think so at this point. If you're the Leafs, you've been hitting your head on the same wall long enough. If it's worth it, I guess that's got to be taken in the reference of what's available for him.
Yeah.
And you're right, that contract, I mean, there's certainly going to be probably close to 30 other teams calling about Mitchell Marner if he is available. But the only thing is, what are you going to be getting back for a deal like that? Because you're going to be giving up a guy who's generational. I know it's not fitting right now with our team. He will figure it out. Like, he's that good. You can just tell the way he's out there, just naturally, he's got it. It's more the physical step up that the playoff brings, which will be a really big adjustment step for him. As an undersized guy, it's taken way too long. But and at times, how he praised Kerfoot, for his ability to hang out in a more physical game. I think it kind of slowed down this series. As Montreal picked up, I noticed Kerfoot being a little bit more of an issue on the ice for us. I just find overall that our smaller guys couldn't live up to the challenge this playoffs, even when we had a bigger lineup overall.
Yeah. It's just it. I honestly don't even know, like, if this is one of those ones where you can look at the team and be like, man, this team can't play playoff hockey, because I think that they were able to play playoff hockey, and we saw that in the first 4 games of the series. Even after game 1 when we lost, we were like, man, this team looks a lot better. They look like they know how to contribute in a playoff type atmosphere. And then they go and win those 3 games. You go up 3-1 in the series, and we're like, this is a team who's playing playoff hockey. They look like they know how to play playoff hockey. But I think it almost just came down to, is this a team that knows how to get it done in big moments? Yes, I think they could play playoff hockey. And I don't think that was, personally, I don't think that was a problem. I think it's just that they lacked, especially, and again, like, I keep saying it over and over, but I think it comes down to Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner not being able to just get it done when it really matters, when it's actually important. They could not get it done. And I think that no matter what kind of players you have throughout the rest of the lineup, it translates and it just trickles down throughout the rest of them to not being able to get it done. Because even through those rest of those guys, I wouldn't say like, oh, those guys played poorly. It's just one of those things where I would be like, oh, you can't pinpoint a Jake Gardiner playing terrible, or Martin Marincin playing terrible, or Freddie Anderson letting in all these bad goals. It's like Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews got outperformed by the entire Montreal Canadiens team.
Yeah, it does go to the superstars first, but I was going to comment behind that, just that I really don't think Sheldon Keefe had a great series or postseason showing whatsoever. I look at a little bit of, I could mention a bunch of different things from the series, but just to take tonight, for example, you got a line out there. It's Simmons, Engvall, and Mikheyev.
Yeah.
Like, what line is that? I know that they're not the issue, really. It's our first line, like you said, those guys are wearing the blame right on the chin, but right behind them, I think Sheldon Keefe, the other head of the snake, in a sense, he didn't make the best decisions. I thought Jumbo was on the ice a lot more than he should have been. And then also flip-flopping Dermott and Sandine at some point. Maybe you wanted to roll with someone. I just thought the fluidity at some point just turned into a lack of structure, and it hurt us.
I know what you're talking about, but I think that the part of your problem here is that when you're Sheldon Keefe and you're looking at the lineup as behind the bench and you're looking at your assistant coaches trying to figure out what to do, it's one of those things where you look at it and say, you can't not play Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner out here, because those, regardless of how they're playing right this second, they are your best. They have been your best players throughout the regular season, and you can't just hold them out of there, because if you hold them out of being on the ice, it's going to be far more questioned than having played them as much as they did and having poor performances from them. But then part of it just goes to the fact that you need to be putting guys out there like Jason Spezza, William Nylander. I would think, like, maybe not that line combination of Engvall, Mikheyev, and Simmons, but like Engvall, I think, played pretty well. Galchenyuk had intensity and energy going. Foligno needs to be out there on the ice because of what he can bring to this team. Like, you were looking at a few guys from further down in the lineup who you want to be putting out on the ice. But then he has to get creative to put those guys out there, because he still has to be finding a way to put Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner out there, which we saw different guys filter through their line of Nick Foligno, William Nylander, Zach Hyman on that line. There was a couple times Wayne Simmons jumped out there with them. Jason Spezza even had the odd time that he was rolling through that line. And it's just like, you can't be looking further down your lineup to get your two best players going. And I understand with what you're saying of that the fluidity can kind of hurt here and there, and I don't disagree with that, but I think that he was put in a position where he was forced to look at other guys throughout this lineup to try to revive or resurrect what was left of Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner. And I think that, yeah, it is hard and the chemistry can kind of get broken further down in the lineup, but I personally don't fault Sheldon Keefe for what happened. I do see what you're saying in that some of the fluidity can kind of hurt the team, but I also look at it on the other hand of like, this guy did everything he could to just filter guys in and out of this lineup that were going to try and get Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner to go, which kind of hurts the rest of the lineup as it goes. But it's your give or take of like, do you leave that line as is and hope that they could just miraculously get it going and leave your other lines, or do you like I don't know. It's just hard to say, because you look at one way of leave it and it doesn't work out, or try things and it doesn't work out, and like there's no right answer, I guess.
Yeah, there's definitely no right or easy answer, because we got all the pros in the world working behind our bench right now. But yeah, we can't figure it out, and it's been so aggravating. And I do still hold Sheldon Keefe accountable for a large part of this, because yeah, he's been good about working in players inevitably to try to get the upper lineup going, but you can't, like, Austin and Mitch did like nothing. Like, you can't really get worse than what they did. So to split them up and have them do nothing isn't really like a crazy thing either. It's not like you lost out on anything. Like, they're at this point where it felt insane. Like, they actually couldn't get anything done.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I honestly think it comes so much back to Carey Price. Maybe that's not a fair analysis to give, but that's what seriously felt like was between us and the next round, to an abnormal rate. I don't know. In normal circumstances, maybe this shuffling of Sheldon Keefe does work out and we continue to move on. Like, honestly, this was a wild experience versus Carey Price. It felt like a LeBron owning Toronto moment again, but Sheldon Keefe, I still think wears significant blame for this, to be honest, but I fully get where you're coming from as well.
It was so weird, honestly, like, and you can touch on this a little bit too, because I'm sure you kind of felt the same as, but it was like, in past years, heading into an elimination game with the Leafs, so you get very excited about the team going in, and you kind of think, especially these past like 4 years, and you think, man, tonight we're going to win this game, or we have a chance to win this game. Even that Game 6 game against Washington in Toronto, Washington was by far the better team, and Toronto was a young team making the playoffs for their first time, but it was like, we got a chance tonight. Like, we can win this one, and you get all excited for it, and you're ready to go. And then even last year against Columbus, Game 5, you battle back after those weird blown 3-1 lead, win after the 3-1 lead kind of situations, and you go into that final game, and you're thinking like, man, tonight we can do it. Tonight we can break through and win a series, regardless if it's a play-in or the first round of the playoffs. You think we can win this one tonight. To be very honest with you, after Game 6 we lost that game, my mental frame going into this as a Leafs fan was just, that's it. Like, straight up, like, that's it. We're not winning this series. And it wasn't even like trying to be grim or like go on the other end of some voodoo stuff and being like, oh yeah, if we think we're going to lose, then we're going to win this one. It was like, no, like, I don't think we can win now. And I woke up today ready for this game tonight thinking like, I don't think we can win, but maybe, like, you know, it was like the least confident maybe. And it just, this game happens and it's so disappointing that this is what resulted, but it's more frustrating than upsetting, I would say.
Yeah, it is. You know what, Phil? I've had this fatalistic approach with the Leafs. Like, honestly, my heart's been broken with the team, right? So I see something like this and I just, it feels terrible top to bottom. Like, I've been a Leafs fan forever. We're at this point where something weird is going on here. Like, I actually don't know what it is. It's becoming to be like this world famous sports curse at this rate. It better be. It deserves that recognition.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say. You're right. I went into Game 7 thinking to myself as well, there's nothing the bulletin board material we have to put up on that, before that game is nothing compared to what the Canadians are putting up in their room, and compared to all the pressure in the world on these guys who can crack like eggs historically. And then Canadians players who, they got the power of the rivalry behind them, the power of Carey Price, underdog mentality, just the perfect storm. And the Leafs go down in 7.
Yeah.
Can't say I didn't see it coming after we lost game 6 though, just like you.
Yeah. Well, let's go into our final thing of our episode here. Let's give our grades of the game. Okay, so I feel like this is probably going to be a pretty unanimous one from both of us here. Like, I just don't see any other way to put it, and I think it was exemplified by the motto from the beginning of the season of cup or bust. So tonight, my grade of the game is an F. This one doesn't just go for tonight's game. This goes for the series as a whole. This goes for the result of the series. Yeah, we had some great games early on. We go up 3-1 in the series, but that's another part of what plays into this F tonight, is just that we had a 3-1 series lead, guys. Like, this is embarrassing at this point. You need to be able to close out these games. You're not rookies anymore. You're not young guys learning how to play in the playoffs for the first time. You have been in the playoffs for 5 straight years. You need to learn how to close out games, especially when these games are important. And these games are, like, it's the playoffs. I'm going to go to that quote of it, Allen Iverson, the playoffs. Like, we're talking about the playoffs. I'm going to switch it up from practice to the playoffs. Like, this is actually important now. We need to win these games. This is when it matters. And we just crumble away and disappear. Like, the only one of the big stars, like we mentioned, was William Nylander, gets on the board tonight. Funny enough, Jason Spezza assists the goal. Like, no crap. The 2 guys who have been some of our best players throughout this entire series. But it's just, you can't close out the series. You go up 3-1. You have 3 opportunities to shut it down. You don't, and you just let this one slip away. It's embarrassing. It's terrible, and it's an F. It's an F. That's what it is for me. It's an F. It's a complete failure.
Yep, I'm giving out the exact same grade. You guessed it, an F for the Leafs. That's, it's what we get for a cup or bust season that ends up in a bust in the first round to a rival. There's really nothing you could say. Like, I don't even know how people are gonna defend the team. Like, when someone chirps me now, I'm gonna be like, "You're right."
Yeah.
I got nothing to say to you.
Yeah.
And I guess it's been like that for a while, but no, it's literally like I went through a phase where I was like telling my friends and talking all that garbage that the Leafs were the team. Who's got that point leaders like us other than Edmonton, and Edmonton's phony. So we just had the team. We knew we had the team. The hype was there. So all that garbage I've been talking, like, it's no use now. I can't say anything. I deserve to be chirped for supporting that team. But at the same time, it's not going to change me next season. I'm going to be back out there supporting the Leafs, doing this pod with you, Philly. But it's one of those things, like, for now, it's an F. It's a complete F.
Yeah. Well, I know we both wish like crazy we had more games to break down for the rest of this season and the rest of this playoff run, but unfortunately that's not going to be the case. That is all for this 2020-2021 season. It was a shortened season, but regardless, everything still means the exact same. The Leafs fall in this one as the number 1 seed to the Montreal Canadiens in Game 7 nonetheless. Like, of course it goes to Game 7. We lose this one 3-1 on an empty net goal after having a 3-1 series lead and letting the Habs fight all the way back. It's just garbage is what it is, and I wish there was more games to break down, but there isn't, because this team is a bunch of chokers, and it's just embarrassing at this point. It's just what it is, and it's what we come to expect as Leafs fans. But moving forward, come back to our channel. We're going to have more videos breaking down more of what happened, some player reactions. They're going to have their exit interviews and everything. We'll have a full list of like injuries that guys played through and reports from coaches, Dubas, everybody that speaks out. Shanahan will probably speak out at some point. We'll break all that down, break down what we think can happen with this team going forward. And we look forward to seeing you guys after those videos. So we'll see you guys soon.